I'm Rob Shields, and this is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. Michaela Keener has a rich history in the modern speed puzzling movement. In this episode, we talk about how a bookstore owner drove her interest in puzzling, how a documentary tried to turn her into the Queen's Gambit of jigsaw puzzlers, and how the pressure of her own expectations almost made her quit speed puzzling early on. Michaela Keener, thanks for joining Peace Talks.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
You recently returned to competitive jigsaw puzzling after taking a year off. I want to explore what led to that stepping away, what led to your return, and how you feel now that Nationals is in the rearview mirror. But before we dig into those topics, let's begin at the beginning. What are your earliest jigsaw puzzle memories?
I have so many memories of doing just kid puzzles on the floor. My mom recently brought my first jigsaw puzzle ever, which was one of those name wooden puzzles.
Like it had your name?
It had my name, yeah. It's missing the I, so I recently brought it to one of my coworkers to make me a new I because he's a woodworker on the side.
That's amazing. So did somebody have to make that puzzle special for you, or is Michaela a much more common name where you grew up than I'm familiar with sort of where I grew up?
No, it definitely was personalized and handmade by someone. I think my mom saw it in a catalog, probably a catalog back in the days, and put my order in, and I've had that puzzle since before I could remember. So I think that's my first puzzle.
And then were you interested in puzzles in general? Like, did they hold a special attraction for you, or were they just like one of many things? Like as kids, you play with all kinds of things. Were they just a run of the mill sort of activity, or were they special from the beginning?
I think there's a lot of things my mom did with me growing up, like I Spy books and different pattern type games that I can also like probably attribute to my speed puzzling skills.
Interesting.
But I always enjoyed puzzles. I remember I loved the United States and learning about the States when I was a kid. And I had a lot of the different puzzles where there was different info on each piece, or they were puzzle shaped or like shaped like the state. But then I definitely puzzled a lot. We puzzle a lot in the winter. I'm from northern Minnesota. We have long winters, cold. And one of my favorite memories is that my mom had gifted my aunt, one of the 500-piece puzzles that was just like a bag of pretzels dumped out.
Oof.
And my aunt was like,
I like the liberal use of gifted in that way.
My aunt was like, oh my gosh. So she did it. Her and her sister did it. And then the next holiday or my mom's birthday, whichever came, she re-gifted it to my mom. And I remember just sitting there and that puzzle sat on the table. It felt forever, but we got it done. And a lot of it was just like, try this piece. There was very little actual like using the image because it was just pretzels.
Do you remember how old you were roughly?
Probably 7 or 8, honestly.
And you were able to give this the level of attention? Like, I feel like most 7 or 8-year-olds are going to walk away from this pretty quick. But you stuck with it?
Oh, yeah. I was sitting there with my mom and my sister. It was just something that we would kind of do when watching TV or listening to the radio. We listened to a lot of, like, NPR growing up. So, like, I have very fond memories of listening to, like, A Prairie Home Companion, being from Minnesota, Garrison Keillor, and doing puzzles and just listening to whatever was going on, car talk, etc. And so, yeah, I remember us doing this puzzle. And at the end of it, once we finished it, my mom actually glued it together, which is the only puzzle we ever glued together, I think, my whole childhood. And she made a dartboard out of it and gave it back with darts to my aunt the next holiday. Like,
that is again, amazing.
Whether it's birthday or Christmas, whichever. And everyone got a great laugh out of that.
And was that dartboard ever like continuously used?
Probably. I did not ask. They recently cleaned out that house, my aunt's house down the street. And so I don't know if, I assume it was in the house still. Who knows if it had holes? We didn't go over to their house a lot. They would come over to our house mostly. So.
Sure. Did you have any idea that you were particularly fast at putting together puzzles?
I don't think I knew I was fast at that point in my life with putting puzzles together. I want to say that during middle school, I kind of fell off puzzling a little bit. I'd started a new school, was in other activities, started playing soccer for the school, so I had practice every day after school. But probably towards the start of high school, my mom and I actually came across this little shop, which was the coolest shop. It was called Secondhand Books and Puzzles, and it was in Duluth, Minnesota. And I believe her name was Penny, and probably people in the community like Val would know who she was. She was a big supporter of what became the Duluth Derby when the Duluth Derby first started, I believe. But so she just had this amazing store, and there she had, I think it was probably about 4 or 5 rows of books that were long, but up on the ceiling, she would hang puzzles. And then on top of all the shelves, there was puzzles. And then in the back room, it was just puzzles. And most of them were secondhand. As I mentioned, she had one shelf that was new puzzles. They'd be a little more expensive. But my mom and I would go in there, and we would just, I'd get dizzy from just walking with my head looking up at the ceiling. And then you'd walk back down the aisle because she had them hanging back to back. So you had to go both ways in a single aisle to see everything she had. And so we started going there. Every once in a while, we'd usually get, 5 to 10 puzzles. They were a good price because they're secondhand. I think it was like $5 for a 500, $10 for 1,000 type deal. And she started giving me challenges. She would there would be 2 puzzles in a box. She'd be like, hey, I'm going to dump these together. And if you bring it back, I'll give you $5 off type thing.
This was Penny, the person at the store, was making challenges for you specifically, or is this just the kind of thing that she did?
No, I don't know if she was doing it for others, but my mom and I would stand there and talk to her for, 30, 40 minutes after buying puzzles, or we would walk in and immediately start talking and be like, one of us would be, oh, Mom, come look at this puzzle. So actually, this is one of my first and favorite puzzles, this White Mountain covered bridge puzzle.
American covered bridges, yeah. And
I loved that style of puzzle, like the collage. And there's so many from the White Mountain puzzles that were that way. And we didn't have those types of puzzles. We had a Lost Springbok, kind of the older Great American Puzzle Company, etc. growing up. And so all of a sudden we started adding more diverse. We started doing the shaped ones, big ladybug one, black bear, and getting into more of these. And so this covered bridge puzzle is still today one of my favorite puzzles.
And was this driven primarily by your mom or primarily by you or by the both of you? Is this just a serendipitous happening to find this little shop? What really pivoted away from, like you said, sort of middle school, you fell away from doing puzzles as a regular thing? What reignited that?
I think like most middle schoolers, you start to butt heads with your parents, or especially one of your parents. As a female, I butt heads with my mom a lot more at that time in my life. And I think that puzzling was one of the times we would not necessarily be butting heads. There wasn't that I know everything attitude that went with it from my side, being, 13, 14, 15-year-old who knew everything all of a sudden, right? My parents absolutely couldn't know what they were talking about, right? So I think that was probably part of it was, my mom and I my dad has never been big into puzzles. He once numbered a 1,000 piece puzzle. So he literally
put numbers on the back.
Yeah, he flipped it over and numbered every piece in order. And I did it with my brother and his friend in high school on a really snowy winter break, I think, once. And we literally just sorted by the back of the puzzle pieces. And we're like, okay, here's all of the 60s. Here's the 70s. Or, right, here are all the ones in the 400s. And we just had bowls. And then we didn't even use the image. And then we flipped it over at the end.
So your dad's approach to puzzling is pretty unconventional.
Yeah. He was the typical dad who would, take a piece off the puzzle table and walk away, and then you'd be like, there's a piece missing. And you might say that, right, depending what piece he took. You might know with even 100 pieces left that you're missing that one piece, and it was there the last time we did this puzzle.
So this was a way for you and your mom to sort of stay connected in a way around a shared interest.
Yeah, and I think it kind of continued into college, the start of my undergrad, because I stayed in Duluth for my undergrad So I would go a little more frequently, and there was actually a fire next door to the shop, and they ended up selling that property altogether. And
Oh,
so the last time I was in that shop, my mom and I also actually bought like 70 to 100 puzzles probably,
wow.
because we didn't know when we would ever get the opportunity to buy that many puzzles for a good deal and support Penny, like someone who we really cared about in the community. And so I remember my mom being like, just get it. Just get it. And the best part of this is like my dad was at a store across the way, and I text or called him like, okay, we're finishing up, but can you bring the car closer? And so he pulled up right in front, and we literally filled the whole trunk of the car. And he's like, at least it's not drugs. And so that's kind of where the puzzle problem started. I mean, like that's really where it took off. And
Puzzle Problem being the name of your Instagram account.
yes, and the name of our original team.
Yeah.
So my dad basically was just, well, at least it's not a drug problem. At least it's just a puzzle problem. It's something you're doing with your mind. There could be worse things. And so from there, it just kind of started snowballing. Like the collection just started snowballing from there, I feel like.
So it wasn't that you picked up these 70 odd puzzles and like you went through them and off they went elsewhere into the world. Like you guys hold on to and collect puzzles?
Yes, for the most part. I definitely have a hard time letting go of my puzzles. The room I'm sitting in probably has close to 1,000, I guess would be. And then there's more downstairs. And my mom still has probably close to another 1,000 at her house. So now that I've bought a house and have space, she's started to bring me puzzles, like my first puzzle ever. And then she showed up with, I think, like 3 or 4 bins of puzzles as well the last time she came.
Classic Mon move. You've got your own space. Here's some of your stuff.
Yeah. And so when I go, she'll be like, hey, there's puzzles to look through. Which ones can I get rid of? And I'll be like, okay, well, do you want these ones? So we kind of trade back and forth. And before we really truly get rid of any of them, we always double check with the rest of the family, because now my sisters are also into puzzling.
Before you ever found speed puzzling, were you ever looking for a broader community to experience puzzles with, or were you really just like, this is a thing we do in our family and not really thinking of it much more beyond that?
It really was just something we did with our family, or occasionally I would put together my own puzzle. I very distinctly remember putting together 1,000 in, a single sitting, and my mom just being like, oh, well, that went together fast. Like, I think she helped me flip the pieces, and she ended up going to bed, and she came downstairs the next day and was like, oh, it's done.
So when did you discover speed puzzling properly?
So that goes back to, actually, my sister got into it first. I am the youngest of 4. I have 2 older sisters and a brother. And my sister, the second oldest sister, my sister Amanda, was friends because of her kids with Amber Pagel Hageland, who is part of the Duluth, Minnesota community, and was part of my original team. And so Amber had started doing the Duluth Derby basically the first year, which I don't know if that was 2012 or 2013. It was somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And it must have been 2015. She asked my sister to do the competition with her because they had figured out my sister liked puzzles as well. And my sister has a master's in poli-sci. She dropped out of her PhD because she didn't like research. She didn't want to teach. So very smart, genius person. And there was someone on the team that just wouldn't shut up about politics. And my sister's like, just let's focus on the puzzle. We're here to have fun. Don't talk about politics when we're doing a puzzle. And so the next year, which would have been my senior year as an undergrad, so spring 2016, I believe, my sister's like, hey, Amber, can I invite my sister to replace that person?
Using her poli-sci degree.
Yeah. And so I had to request the day off from work or a different shift so I could go to the Duluth Derby. And we did the 4-person team, 500, and then my sister and I stuck around for the pairs event. And I think we got 3rd maybe in teams, third or fourth. It was our first time really doing a puzzle. I think we might have done a warm-up puzzle, like kind of, but we're talking through it. We weren't really what I would consider speed puzzling now, but it was the first time I'd ever done a puzzle for time.
Right, the intent to go fast. Give us an idea of how many teams there would be at an event like this.
I have honestly no idea for that event. I remember where it was, and based on other events I've been at, I think like a max of 30 teams maybe. It was a 4-H event, but puzzling is obviously a big thing in Minnesota, kind of the state of puzzling. I think that Minnesota can probably claim the state of puzzling at this point.
Yeah.
For many reasons.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we took third or fourth, and it was actually a kind of odd shaped puzzle. It was a hexagon, maybe. It definitely wasn't a circle, but it definitely threw us off in terms of like where you'd normally spatially think something should be. And then my sister and I stuck around, and I think we took seventh in pairs. And we were like, oh, this was a lot of fun. And then we didn't do anything until the next year.
At this point, you're in grad school.
Yep. But my sister had bought me one of the subscriptions to get a puzzle every month from Puzzle Warehouse at that time. So I was still doing puzzles.
And who was more into it at this point, your sister or you?
I don't know if they were necessarily practicing a bunch back in Minnesota at that point either. So I think we were just kind of doing it for the social aspect, but literally the year between, like we just did puzzles casually as a family or by ourselves again. And then I think it was 2018. I started working for the airline, so I was actually able to fly back, and that's when we started practicing. And we had finally convinced our mom to join the team. So it was Amber, it was my sister Amanda, and then my mom and I. And it was a little hard to get our mom to agree at first. She said, I'm just going to slow you down. We're like, you're who taught us to puzzle. And so we started practicing a little bit more, and I would just fly back, and if they knew I was flying back, they'd be like, hey, can we get together? Or they would try to plan it and be like, can you make it? If you can, great. If not, we'll practice without you type thing. And so Amber actually started having a few more people join on, it might not even necessarily be a team thing. There might be 6 of us working on a puzzle, just kind of more of a social thing and trying to get a little more people into it. And I think it was probably that last year I was in Wyoming. I had finished my master's. I was working as an adjunct professor teaching exercise physiology labs. And then I was still working for the airline. So I still had my flight benefits. So I was flying back like probably twice a month, honestly, for different events, not all puzzling, but puzzling was a big draw. And I came back for Duluth Derby weekend. And I think that's when we really started accelerating. So I think we took third, and then Amber and I actually won pairs, I believe. And then I got second in the sprint. And apparently this is when Sarah decided that she didn't like me. She's like, who's this girl who's coming in and getting to be so fast?
Right.
And I had no idea who Sarah was at that point. I was still just like showing up, going to the competition, going home and just doing more puzzles and being like, this is great. I love puzzles.
So you were doing puzzles. You came back to Duluth. You guys were improving your capabilities. Sarah told the story as well, where she saw you as a threat. I'm not sure if she quite characterized it like that, but right around this time, how did it escalate from there?
So I think back in 2017, I'd set a goal to do 52,000 pieces in a year. And I wasn't doing puzzles daily. I wasn't usually I was just doing them on the weekend at that point because of my work and school schedule. And I remember it being 2017 because I did an internship in Jackson Hole. And so I didn't do a single puzzle between Memorial Day and Labor Day because I was just out hiking. I was working. I was doing an internship, just enjoying Jackson Hole, the summer in Wyoming. And I hit the 52,000 literally on New Year's Eve. Wow. And so the next day I was like, I think I'm going to start an Instagram account just to start tracking my puzzles. So I think if you scroll way back, I think I started my account in early 2018. And for a really long time, I didn't post my face. I literally was just tracking the puzzles I was doing just so I could go back and remember.
And there were not a lot of other people doing that.
No, I think the only other people, the first person I remember interacting with is Diane Bizzle. So Biz has been around since before I was on Instagram. So we talk about being some of the OGs for the puzzlegram fam community.
Right. And now it is just so much bigger.
It's insane. But it started accelerating kind of after that, because that's when I started going back to Minnesota. And then when I moved to Kentucky in early 2019, I moved to Kentucky in June 2019 to start my PhD. And we continued. I couldn't fly back the same way because I was no longer working for the airlines, unfortunately, and loved that gig.
Right.
But I was just doing my own puzzles on my own time. And I was doing more and more just by myself. So I always had a puzzle on my table. And then Amber was like, hey, can we do the Winter Carnival? And so we would practice when I would go back for like Thanksgiving, Christmas. And I bought my tickets to go to Winter Carnival in January 2020. And kind of the week or two leading into it, I started speeding puzzles and I started posting my times on Instagram just because that's what I was doing.
Was this the first time that you had really focused on going fast?
I never tried to speed puzzle on my own until probably that last month going into Winter Carnival 2020. And that was because I couldn't be with my team practicing like I had been. So I was like, how can I practice to make sure that when I do get there, we are still strong? Because they were in Duluth practicing without me. And I obviously could not fly up there at the time. And so I think that was the first time, January 2020, I just had a set of 500 to 550, and I would sit and do, 3 or 4 puzzles on a Saturday. And I remember the light getting really dark. I didn't really have the setup. I was using the coffee table I had made out of pallets, actually. And I would just squat on the edge of the table, which I'm known for squatting on the table in the inaugural event that USAJPA hosted. The first question they had for me on that event was, are you a yoga instructor? Because I literally just was squatting on the table because it was easier than sitting on the ground just with how the table was. It helped my back instead of just leaning, hunching over. I would just sit or squat on the edge of the table and do the puzzle.
You had been practicing with your team. Did practice incorporate anything other than just doing volumes of puzzles? Did you guys were you working through strategies? Did you have sort of tactical approaches to how you would think about puzzles? Was it anything more than let's just get together and do a bunch of reps?
I think it was just get together and do a bunch of reps, because that 2019 puzzle at the Duluth Derby, it had a border that was basically the same all around. And one of us stuck on that border the whole time. And then that's when we found out, hey, you don't actually have to do the border first. We'd never actually thought about that.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was Sarah's team or the other team that was ahead of us, but they're like, oh yeah, we did the border last. And we're like, oh, that makes sense. Because we never thought of it. We'd just get together and do puzzles.
Right. And you had a way of doing it.
We would just communicate. We could, especially my sister and I, my mom and I as well, we could move around each other really well. We would really never hit each other's hands as we sped up throughout the process. And so really there was no tactile aspect to how we were puzzling. We were just getting together and puzzling and enjoying each other's company while doing a puzzle fastish.
Right.
Or fast.
Right.
Back then it was fast.
When you were doing competitions, there was a certain joy at being fast, I imagine. Was the competition really something you were there for the competitive portion of it primarily, or because it was a fun way to spend some time together?
I think it started as a fun way to spend time together. And then as Amber realized how fast we were getting as a team, and I think as I started sending them those times of what I was doing on my own, those weeks leading into Winter Carnival, Amber was like, Michaela's fast. I think that was kind of her reaction. And I was just like, I'm just enjoying this. One of the puzzles I did during that couple weeks into Winter Carnival 2020 had been one of the pairs puzzles from Duluth Derby, maybe a year or two prior, that was this really kind of, at the time, the first time we did it, felt awful. It was more of this abstract canoe on the lake. Lots of oranges and purples. I think that's one of the only ones I've gotten rid of from my puzzle twist collection. And I redid it by myself. And I think I beat our time as a pair time doing it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd posted that time, and Tony Nelson, the owner of Puzzle Twist, had actually caught on to that. I don't remember if I had tagged the Puzzle Twist company just because it was their puzzle or what. And so when we got to Winter Carnival, he kind of gave me this shout out of, there's this person they took first at the Duluth Derby last year, and she recently did a puzzle in this time a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get recognized. This is weird. And we actually won our heat at Winter Carnival. And so I think that's the first time Sarah actually approached me. Being like, hey, I'm Sarah. Like, hi.
That was 2020. COVID hits. There's not a lot of in-person opportunities to do puzzling anymore. You've sort of started developing your own personal practice. You're being known for like getting some awareness about being a fast puzzler. So being a fast puzzler is maybe now becoming part of your identity. What do you do for the next couple of years?
Right after that win at Winter Carnival is when Sarah and I actually started talking a little bit more. And I actually had an event up in Duluth right at the end of end of February. And she actually drove up and did it with us. And so that's the first time Sarah and I puzzled together. She drove all the way up from the Twin Cities to Duluth, which is 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Did this puzzle, did a warm-up puzzle with us. I think did the puzzle, might have stuck around for one more puzzle, and then literally turned around and drove back. And I think it was during that time that I've been like, hey, I have this puzzle in like a puzzle Instagram. And I'd finally started kind of showing my face on it. And she's like, well, would that be copying? I was like, no, like there's other people that do it. And so that's how Sarah Does Puzzles got started.
You are the cause.
A little bit, yeah. Her and I recently talked about that it was me being like, no, it's not copying, like just join this community. And little did we know that a month later, the community would start to explode on Puzzle Instagram because of the pandemic. All of a sudden people started, turning to puzzles. And so during that first big boom, there were a few people that would do puzzle together. So maybe you're all working on different puzzles, or if people knew you had the same puzzles, people would start to kind of challenge each other. Like, hey, let's see who can do this, one faster. And so kind of just built from there. I remember starting to do we would do puzzle bingo on Instagram, and some of them would be like, do a puzzle from one side to the other, like a gradient. You could pick a gradient to make it easier. Do one upside down, like literally the image upside down. You could do 100 pieces, but do the puzzle so it's just the blank side. And we'd have mixed puzzles. I mean, I started mixing. I think one of the first big mixes I decided to do myself was actually not big. It was 3 micro puzzles. And that was the first time that I started working with micro puzzles. And I love that company so much. I mean, they were so impressed with what I was doing. I was like, oh, well, I just enjoy it. It was fun. And so the community really started to explode, obviously, during the pandemic. I went from having 50 to 100 followers to 1,000, 2,000. And all of a sudden, it was just insane how much the community was changing at that point. And a lot of us were becoming puzzle influencers because there were so many companies being like, hey, we need to people are loving the puzzles right now. This is the only way we can stick together when we're, quarantined, etc. And so it's insane to think of how much the community shifted in that first 2018 to end of 2020. It just exploded, it felt like.
Now, when you say you said that the community changed and then later you said it shifted, I'm curious, is that just a matter of how many people were in it, or did it have an actual change qualitatively somehow?
I think it did change qualitatively as well. There was definitely more people starting to put their times out there, or people realized that some people were getting free puzzles and would kind of get upset if they were also not getting free puzzles type thing. Mm-hmm. I felt like the first probably 6 months of the pandemic, it felt like the community was really tight. They were coming together through puzzles. And then there started to be a little shift of more and more people coming, and all of a sudden drama started. Like, you just hear little blurbs about drama here and drama there, and you're like, oh, this is kind of tarnishing the community. And going into that fall 2020, we'd actually started putting together a Worlds team to go in 2020. And it was originally Amber, me, and then EB and Dan were going to be our fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they ended up canceling Worlds 2020 for obvious reasons. And so we just kind of were like, okay, well, we'll talk about it in 2021.
Did you ever give any thought to going to the first U.S. Nationals competition?
So actually I did the first inaugural USA JPA event that was September
and that
2020.
Was a virtual competition, am I remembering that correctly?
It was a virtual competition, and I won that competition. And that's when I kind of started getting an actual name in the speed puzzling community, because it was the first time USA JPA had a big group of people together. They had the Breakfast with Champions a couple months later, and then Sarah and I helped host another event, We Heart Puzzles, as a fundraiser for Heart Month in February. And during that time I was going through testing for my own heart condition, which is kind of what led us to do that. I needed something else to focus on.
Sure.
In addition to my PhD and everything else I was doing.
Right.
And there was also a documentary that was starting to be filmed during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And that documentary definitely rubbed a lot of people in the community the wrong way.
Is this one that has been released?
Nope, it did not get off the ground, probably partially because of Worlds 21 being postponed. So originally they were following a few of the teams from the USA, and they were going to follow us to Worlds. And so I know that they're following our team, which at that time, because of how they had the rules, the team at the time consisted of myself, Amber, EB, Dan, Kara Taylor, and Sarah Schuler, and Will Flannery. So we had 7 of us. And then I know that they're also kind of following Kat Dilk's team that had Gray and Jeffrey Scott. So Gray Rogers,
mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Scott at the time. And I forget who else was on that. And so we actually ended up going and meeting as a team in St. Louis to do a big filming where they came down with just our team. And we got to do Puzzle Warehouse. And we ended up not having as much time to speed puzzle and practice as a team because of the filming. Like, I almost walked out at one point just because I was frustrated. I just wanted to be there to puzzle, and they kept pausing us and wanting certain things. They kept wanting us to say certain things as well.
I see. They had a narrative.
They needed to create that drama, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get the buy-in for this reality TV or this documentary series? They didn't really know how they were going to frame it yet.
Uh-huh.
But they had come and filmed in Kentucky with me in April of 2021. And during that time, they were trying to get me to say things that I didn't think were true. So I wouldn't say them, and they would kind of try to rephrase it to see if I would say it in a different way. And I was like, no.
And these were just micro drama sorts of things. Is that it? Or were they trying to characterize the puzzling scene some way?
They're definitely, I heard things through other people who were being filmed about them trying to make some of us seem kind of weird, unique people.
Mm-hmm.
But they were trying to turn me actually into like the Queen's Gambit of puzzling, because Queen's Gambit had just come out.
That's amazing.
Queen's Gambit took place in Lexington, Kentucky,
Uh-huh.
right? She was from Lexington. They're like, you're from Lexington. They literally filmed a shot where I was laying in my bed looking up at the ceiling. And they were going to do something with puzzle pieces like the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
But somewhere I have a photo of them having a camera like in my face. And the guy like trying to not awkwardly like be over me laying in my bed.
Uh-huh.
It was just I almost didn't do the team filming because I didn't like how the individual filming went, basically. But some of my teammates were like, but we could be like the next Wicker Kittens. I was like, okay, you're right. And so and then I was the one who decided, like, I have many other things to risk research-wise. I cannot risk going to Worlds. So I actually was the one who said, hey, because of the Delta variant, I am pulling out. I'm not going to Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a domino effect. Sarah and I had been talking about it. And she was like, if you pull out, I'll pull out. And so I was like, okay. So I did. And then she immediately responded. And then it was, I think it just kind of domino affected. And all of us but Amber were really like, okay, we're not going. And then a week later, they ended up delaying it.
Right.
And so the next Nationals was also online. They did like an unofficial 2021 Nationals. And I went to Minnesota and I think they just did individuals and then like a team / pair combo because they weren't sure how many people would actually be able to get in the same room with others. And so Amber had driven down from Duluth. Kara Taylor drove up from Iowa, and we did it at Sarah's house. And actually, Sarah and I both did the individual competition. I did it in her entryway on the floor because I thought that was the best natural light, and it allowed me to squat like I liked doing.
Uh-huh.
And it was so funny because we both opened up those puzzles. We talked about it after. We both almost just were like, we don't want to do this puzzle. This kind of sucks. Like I think we were both starting to feel a little more of the pressure of like, okay, the community's growing. We knew that Will was really good. We knew Gray and some others were getting good. And I think that's when I first started feeling some of the pressure to like, oh, I won the inaugural event last fall. I need to do well this one. And I saw the hang loose puzzle is what it was.
Uh-huh.
And I opened it and I was just like, oh, I almost yelled up the stairs like, I'm not doing this. And apparently Sarah almost did the same thing to me. Like, I'm not doing this.
What was it about that puzzle that was particularly challenging or that made you
I don't think it was the puzzle. I think it was the mindset I was in.
Really?
I think it was just the fact I was putting so much pressure on myself to do well or that I had to do a certain way because so many people had been putting this pressure on me. Like, oh, they're going to Worlds. They have this really good team.
Was this a puzzle that when you opened it, sounds like Sarah as well, it didn't obviously lend itself to your skills and therefore you felt like you wouldn't be able to excel on it? Like what was it about you said it was the mindset, but that mindset's got to intersect with the puzzle in some way. I imagine there are puzzles where you would have been like, yay, let's do this. Yeah,
honestly, looking back, like I recently did this puzzle for the first time right before Nationals this year.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, why did I have that mindset?
Interesting.
Like, why did I not like this puzzle? Because doing it now, I love the puzzle. So I don't think at that point, I'm not sure it would have mattered which puzzle it was. I think I was just so in my head that it didn't matter if it was a gradient, sky, dandelion, lupine situation like Worlds, or if it was a collage, which is one of my favorite things to do. Like, I think either way, I would have been like, because of the pressure I was putting on myself to like, I have to do a certain way.
Do you think that Sarah was feeling the same way?
I think at that time, Sarah and I were kind of in this friendly competition, but she thought I was faster than her. And I thought she was faster than me at times because it really just depended on the puzzle between her and I.
Yeah.
So for us to both be in the same house doing it, I think was kind of also like, who's going to finish first? Is Sarah going to walk down those stairs being like, because you don't, in the Zoom events, especially those ones, you don't know who's going to be ahead of you. Like I would mute it. So if anyone said anything, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I technically got second behind Gray. Will Flannery did not get his puzzle in time, and he actually beat both of our times, so he was like the unofficial champion because he couldn't be on the Zoom to do it, but he did it the next day.
Yeah.
And so that kind of set the tone. We were really excited to have Will on our team, and then we progressed across the summer, being like, okay, we're going to Worlds, supposedly. We did this filming in St. Louis, and throughout that summer, especially after or starting around when we went to St. Louis and following that, I bought a bunch of 500-piece puzzles I found off of Mercari, I think, because it was still kind of hard to get puzzles at that time.
Yeah.
Because of the supply and demand. And so I'd found a good deal. I had all these puzzles. And same type of thing. I would open up these puzzles and start going through it, and I would just get in my head when I was trying to speed them at home by myself. I didn't even have times to compare to anyone else. And I was just like, I'm not going fast enough. Like I was telling myself during these puzzles, I'm not going fast enough. And it would definitely get in my head to the point where I was starting to have nightmares about speed puzzling.
So lots of stress and pressure already, and we were still in the early stages of jigsaw puzzling exploding. What was the first major in-person competition you did post-COVID? Was that Worlds?
Yes. Well, actually, that's not true. So my first in-person competition, my first in-person 500 individual was actually Northeast Regionals in 2023. And I was there. I'm not in the Northeast region. Obviously, I'm in Kentucky. But our team for Worlds 23 was myself, EB, Karen, Puzzles, and Sarah. And so we decided that we would go and do a team practice together during the Northeast Regional weekend. And I'll go stay up at EB's house in Connecticut. And so that is what we did. Sarah, unfortunately, could not join us because she finally got COVID for the first time. So she was unable to join us, but thankfully that happened before Worlds. So kind of a blessing in disguise in a sense that she got sick before we headed out to Worlds. And so even when EB picked me up on that Friday or Thursday before Northeast Regionals, I don't remember when I flew in, she was like, "Did you sign up for individuals?" I was like, "No." Like I was still a little, I'd been getting better. I had agreed to join speed puzzling. But really after pulling out of Worlds 2021 is when I said, I'm done. Like I might literally be done speed puzzling because of the stress I was feeling and the nightmares. That's why I didn't go to Worlds 22 when they did finally get Worlds 22, which was a June event, I believe. I had no interest. A few people asked me. Amber asked what was happening with the team. She ended up joining Gray, Roger, and Kat. And I think Jeffrey, it was the four of them maybe. And then the rest of us that were on the original team with Amber ended up going in 22 for various reasons. But mine was because I literally had no interest in puzzling at that point.
Did that impact your sort of influencing game as well? Or was that like a different part of your brain?
It did. And I think the influencing actually was kind of a catalyst that was causing some of this stress because I was getting so many puzzles from other companies and to the point where I wasn't doing puzzles I was enjoying. Like it literally just was becoming a job. Oh, I need to do this puzzle and get it posted for this company. Oh, this other company also sent me a puzzle or these two puzzles and they want it by this certain date. So now I have to change the order of what puzzles I'm doing, or I have to do an extra puzzle on top of doing my PhD work. And I was a part-time PhD student, full-time staff, research coordinator. And I also have multiple side gigs as well because I have ADHD and I don't sit still most of the time. I've gotten a lot better over the years. That's probably part of the mindset change as well.
Just to be clear, you were getting all these puzzles with people making demands on you or polite requests. I'm not really sure how that worked out, but this is stuff that you were not getting paid for by those companies to do, nor, correct me if I'm wrong, making a sizable income off of the content that you're posting.
Correct. At that time, I was really just getting free puzzles. I was writing blogs for one company or two companies, and they would either give me a small amount each month for each blog, or they would say, we'll help sponsor you for Worlds when you do go. So that's how I originally was going to be funding Worlds when I went in 21, was kind of using these sponsorships I'd kind of built up without asking for a direct, like, hey, can you pay me for this content?
So along comes the Northeast Regional Championship. You guys were sort of together to try and practice. You did individuals.
I did.
How did you feel about doing individuals? Like, was the pressure really there when you were doing that? Like you had reservations about doing it in the first place. And if you finally looks like you decided to do it, how did that feel?
Yes. So I think during the day, EB has really helped me grow as an individual. I love EB to death. And she just was like, you need to get it out of your system. You need to do one in-person event before Worlds. This is your opportunity to do individuals and get that mind, like, what is your mindset going to be during this puzzle? And I definitely started to switch from now, thanks to EB, now I know this, a performance mindset where everything was, I have to be the best, to a growth mindset of whatever puzzle I get, I'm just going to puzzle it. And however it goes, it goes. And so I think I did not register. She did not know I registered until we were driving to the event that morning because I did it laying in bed that night. Literally Friday night and Saturday morning we're driving, and I think I said something. She's like, oh, you signed up. Oh, good. I'm glad. And so going into that puzzle, I remember standing up and my legs just, as soon as we started puzzling, my whole body was just shaking. My legs were shaking. I was shaking. My hands were shaking. I was sharing a table with Karen. It was my first time doing an individual puzzle by myself in a true competition setting. And I was sitting there and flipping the pieces. And out of the corner of my eye, I thought Karen flipped all of her pieces before me. And technically she did, but she wasn't sorting her pieces.
Right.
I didn't know that because I didn't fully look over. And so I'm just flipping. At one point, I had music in my ears, but I heard kind of a gasp in the middle of between songs. And it was actually Tiffany who almost pushed her or did push part of her puzzle off the table. Or like she pulled her edge or something off the table and had this kind of gasp. And I was like, oh my gosh, did someone finish? Because I still had probably 100 pieces left at the time. I was like, wow, okay. And just keep going. And so then when people started coming close to me and filming, Jonathan standing there filming, or his son was, I just remember my hands shaking. And even Karen talks about it, I think, in her video when she was introducing our team and how she covered the Northeast Regional event. You can just, if you go back and watch that video, my hands are shaking like crazy. And finally I get it. And I just stood up. And she talks about that too. When I finished, I didn't celebrate. I wasn't like, woohoo, nothing. I just stood up and I was like, okay, it's done. And I looked around and I was like, oh, I won. Okay. And Evie was like, I knew you were going to win. It's like, thanks, Evie. I'm glad you didn't put that in my head before we started.
One more piece of stress. So there's a certain amount of like battling your internal demons that comes with any individual sport, I imagine. But I see a lot of people in competitive jigsaw puzzling, especially this last year, really struggling with that portion of things. And I'm trying to get a sense of whether that is, what is it that's unique about competitive jigsaw puzzling, and maybe your experience specifically, that made that seem so pronounced versus maybe what other people are feeling in other sports, or is it the same?
I think it's probably the same. So I actually recently went to a seminar as a professor to learn about test anxiety and how to handle test anxiety in students. And I don't currently teach, but the whole time I was sitting there, mind you, this was the week after nationals. I was like, this applies to speed puzzling. This is literally what Rob and I are planning to talk about, is this idea that people get in their heads. They forget. They might have studied. You might have practiced. You might have been doing deliberate practice. Coming from a sport expertise background, you could have done deliberate practice. I know people who would specifically practice flipping and just flipping. They would practice, right? We practice all sorts of different puzzles. And some people are very deliberate with every single puzzle they're trying to learn something from. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is part of becoming an expert, is deliberate practice. Yeah. But then there's something that happens when you get to these competitions, that it's like all of that practice that you've done over the last year or the last month or your whole lifetime, in a sense, depending when you started puzzling and it doesn't even have to be puzzling, I don't think. Like I said, I think that doing I Spy and matching games and those type of things as a kid probably plays into how I look at images now and how I puzzle now. So when people get in their head and they have this mindset that is, as I said, a performance mindset, where they are looking to win or looking to be a certain place, they're starting to put this like external pressure, but it's not external. It's really an internal pressure in their head, but they start being like, people are going to judge me if I don't do a certain way. And that's what I was experiencing, was this like social desirability to need to be what everyone thinks I am, because people are here saying, you're so fast, not you've done so much work to get here.
Yeah.
You've done so much practice to get here. You've done so many puzzles and spent so many hours to get to this point, versus, you know, this growth mindset where, okay, I hear people talk about like, I hate that puzzle. I don't hate a single puzzle anymore. And that is one of the biggest things that has changed in my mindset since 2021, when I was having nightmares about speed puzzling and took that step back saying, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like, this was supposed to be something fun and it's not. I'm having nightmares. I literally packed all of my puzzles from my puzzle wall away and put them in bins in the garage. Like, I didn't want to see a puzzle for a while. Like, that's how bad it got for me. And I was like, I don't like this. I hate that this is what puzzling has become to me, when it's something I love and cherish so much. So how, like, what do I need to change in my mindset to make this worth going back? I didn't know at the time, like, am I going to go back? And so there was definitely a big, growth that had to happen for me to return to speed puzzling.
And so at this Northeast Regional competition, was this feels like the beginning of the growth curve for you? Is that true? Or like this was you internalizing a different way of thinking about things and giving it a go. But this isn't you having really mastered the things, right? Because it sounds like you're still experiencing a lot of the pressure. You're still feeling a lot of that internal talk. This feels actually like a pivotal moment in the Michaela Keener story. Is that true?
I think it was the start of it. Like, I'd definitely been growing. I'd definitely been working through just things in life in general, but also just trying to, part of that was getting a control of my general anxiety. Like, I'm an anxious person in general, and that's probably from being a high achiever, that A+ student most of my life, and wanting to do well in everything I did. But over that year when I wasn't doing as much speed puzzling, and was just trying to get back into enjoying the puzzles, part of it was also trying new things that I wasn't good at. I had met my fiance, and he's like, hey, you like to run. Have you done trail running? And I was like, well, I kind of have bad ankles, but sure, let's try it. And so I started doing that. He got me into mountain biking that same year, like doing these things that I'd never done in my life. I had no idea if I would enjoy or be good at, but was like, okay, just enjoy the process of learning a new skill and being okay with him, cruising by me, or him being like, oh yeah, I'll run with you. And then the next day he runs the same thing, and half the time we ran it together the day before, right? And so I think that probably helped in starting building towards it. But that Northeast Regional competition was the first time I could really actually put it to the test in terms of the speed puzzling realm. It was the first time I was coming back after taking that initial break from speed puzzling, from kind of puzzling in general. But definitely I had backed out a lot from the puzzle Instagram community in terms of influencing. I was only agreeing to do a few things for companies here and there, and it was really a pick and choose for me. So it was giving myself the ability to say no to certain companies and being like, no, I'm good. Good luck. You have beautiful puzzles. They're not my style of puzzle, or I don't want to have to force myself to do this puzzle and make content for it. So I do think there was this start of this growth curve that you're talking about that started to happen at Northeast Regionals.
How do you think it would have been different if you hadn't placed first in that competition?
That's a good question. I wasn't, like, Tiffany and I weren't that far apart in that competition.
Tiffany
in
Medeiros.
The grand scheme of, Tiffany Medeiros, and I weren't that far apart from each other in that puzzle. And I think she would have been a little closer if she didn't accidentally swipe her edge off her table as well. But I think it probably helped that I got first, but I don't think it would have been a knockdown if I hadn't gone first. I think I would have been like, I got this out of my system. This is good practice for Worlds, because I didn't expect to win Worlds. And so I was already kind of starting to prepare myself for what is it going to be like, whatever spot I get. And at no point going into Worlds did I say, I want to be in the top 10. I want to be in the top 20. People would ask me about it. And I just was like, I just want to do the best that I can, given the puzzle that is given to me at the end of the day.
Right.
And so that was kind of the start of that mindset forming. And that mindset has definitely helped me a ton.
So it's about a month later that you end up at Worlds.
Yes.
You have a chance to kind of continue this exploration. You are competing in individuals in the heats, and then you make it into the finals, which is not particularly surprising. Where was your mindset at this time around? So you're in the finals. There's an opportunity for some stress and pressure here. It's on a bigger stage. It's probably being covered more. You might have your own expectations built on that, even though you're trying to work through that. Do you feel like you were in a better place when you sat down for the individuals finals?
So I will say that semifinals, I had a really bad go at Worlds. And I was very thankful that it happened then and not finals. But I was really struggling with my ADHD. I was hyper focusing on things that I normally would not when I speed puzzle. So I was getting stuck on a certain color. It was the poke bowl, circle of colors. I'd done the puzzle as a team earlier that summer and really did enjoy it at that point. And so I think that was part of it, is I did open it. I was like, oh, I didn't like this puzzle then. I'm not going to like this puzzle now. And the poor guy next to me in the semifinal, he didn't have deodorant on, which did not help. It was very hot, humid in that dome. Mm-hmm. And so I was already kind of like, oh, okay, we can do this. But I was literally taking these deep breaths, like trying to get myself to focus again. But I was forcing, and he did not have headphones on. So I think the whole time he just heard me heavy breathing, like, like almost like annoyed and I almost threw that puzzle off the table when I finished it. Like that was probably the last time I've had that bad of an attitude doing a puzzle. And I think I kind of like threw down my puzzle board at the end. And Sarah's like, hey, we need to use those tomorrow. Or we need those still. I'm like, sorry. It was not supposed to be like that drastic. It was just like, I was very frustrated with my own like mindset during it. It wasn't even at that point the puzzle. It was just because I had gotten so stuck in my head again after feeling like I had made progress, because overall the first round felt pretty good. I think I got 9th, maybe? I don't remember, honestly, in my first prelim round with the lupines. But I felt okay. I felt good about that puzzle. And then when I got into that poke bowl and just did not have a good time, I was really frustrated. And so actually, right before the finals for individuals, I went to Evie's hotel room, and she basically talked me off the edge. And she's like, do you remember this advice that you gave me? Like, if something's not working, switch to another spot. And she basically just reminded me of everything I had told her as we were practicing together a month prior, or things she had learned from me 3 years prior. She's like, you are the person who's taught me X, Y, Z, or taught me, hey, I don't always have to do borders first. That type of things. And so having that conversation and her being like, you just need to stay out of your own way, basically, is kind of, in a sense, what she ended up saying and how she talked me off the ledge at the end. And so going into finals, I felt a lot better than I had the night before after the semifinals. And I opened up those chair legs. That's all I think about with that puzzle, is those chair legs. And I just went, okay, this is what I have. And I just do what you do. Put a piece in, repeat, keep going. And I think that worked for me. I was in the top 20, so I won't complain about that.
Yeah, you finished that one 17th. How did you feel at the end of that round?
I felt great. And it was kind of funny because at one point, I really try not to look up or around. Like, looking at other people is not going to help you. It's not like a test. You're not cheating off them. You're not going to look over and be like, oh, they did the yellow. Let me see if I can do the yellow too. Uh-huh. Like, you're good. At some point, you're going to have to do all the pieces in an individual contest. So what is your eyes seeing? Don't worry about what the people over here or here in front of you or even behind you are doing. I did at one point like glance up, and I thought Sarah had finished her puzzle. I was like, dang, go Sarah. Little did I know she had not. And I felt really bad when I realized that she hadn't finished her puzzle and had kind of was going through the mindset I had the night before. She swore and was like, this is immediately swore and was like, this is not my puzzle. Sarah swore, no, never. Versus my mindset was, okay, I didn't love the puzzle, but this is the puzzle I was given. This is the puzzle I have to show what I have. Mm-hmm. And just trusting everything I'd done up to that point to get there. And so when I finished, I was really happy. One, I was like, it's done. I did it. I've made it. I finally came to Worlds. I did the puzzle. I did the thing. I'm happy with how I did. And I just relaxed. I was like, okay, what's next? Pairs final. Mm-hmm. Let's go. Like, I think my fiance and I went and celebrated and grabbed ice cream between that and pairs. But it was the first time, I think, that whole week. It was just like the weight was lifted off my shoulders to actually have a good mindset and be happy with where I placed, and felt like the whole time I was making progress through the puzzle. I wasn't getting stuck in a mindset or questioning my abilities. It was just, okay, what works next? That's not making sense. Let's switch over to this side. Okay, I got a couple pieces, getting some momentum going again.
So after Worlds, my trail of Michaela Keener drops off.
Yes.
What happened after Worlds? It sounded like you pivoted into the right headspace. You were making some good progress. Was it just like you were like, you know what, I've made such great progress that I can actually step away and focus on other things? Or what was going on in this gap?
Yeah, so originally I wasn't even going to go to Worlds in 23, but Sarah and I had kind of made a pact that we would go to Worlds the first time together. Mm-hmm. And so originally, when I was starting to come back from my I'm never speed puzzling again in 21 and was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm doing some more puzzles. I did, I think I did the Duluth, or not the Duluth. I think I did the Christmas puzzle twist with my family and was like, oh yeah, I do enjoy this. And that's really all I had done during that kind of 21, 22, where I was just working through life and trying to make puzzles fun again. And so when Sarah was like, hey, I think that I'm going to go to Worlds next year. And that was probably right after Nationals in 22, mm-hmm. which I couldn't go to because of work constraints. I do a lot of my research data collection in October and April. So the fact I could go to Nationals this year was also kind of, it was just a chance because of where I do data collection is under construction right now. So I don't have the space. And so as soon as I saw the dates for 2022, it wasn't that I wasn't ready to go in 2022. I literally just couldn't go to Nationals mm-hmm. in 2022. Mm-hmm. And so then when Sarah was like, hey, I'm kind of getting pressure to go to Worlds in 23. Are you going to come with me? Are we going as a team? I said, okay, yeah, let's do it. But the original plan was not to try to do Worlds again until after I finished my PhD, just because there's so much other stress I had in my personal life trying to get things finished up as a PhD student and full-time staff. So coming back from Worlds, I was like, okay, time to finish this PhD. And so literally I finished my PhD in spring of 24. And so really that last 9 months after Worlds was focusing on my research and my work instead of puzzling.
Were you at Winter Carnival? I don't recall.
I was not. I had a lot of travel. I was doing a National Science Foundation Innovation Corps, which is a 7-week intensive program during my spring semester when I was also trying to finish my defense. I've had a patent pending at one point during that time. And so I was just like, I'm out for the foreseeable future. Like, no one asked me to do anything, basically, was my response when people are like, hey, Winter Carnival. I immediately was just like, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. It's just not in the books for this year or probably next year either for travel and work purposes.
So then Nationals 2025 was coming along in a time where you actually had availability. At what point did you decide to go?
I think as soon as they announced that they're actually going to do it, and it was the first weekend of April, which usually I don't do data collection the first weekend. I research jockeys is one of the things I do. And so the local racetrack is open all of April, really. But we never do data collection that opening weekend. So I was like, okay, well, even if we have a spot to do research, I actually can be gone that weekend because it would be that first weekend anyways. And so I think we were a little late to the game. Sarah was surprised when she found out that EB had convinced me to go. I think as soon as EB had the date, she was like putting it in my ear. Hey. And I was like, let me just double check with Sarah to make sure I'm not stepping on toes. Uh-huh. And she'd already agreed to go with her Minnesota team, the Betches. Yep. And so it was, okay, EB. I kind of talked to my fiance. He's like, you should do it. And I think also having that support from him, like as like an excitement and just like, go have fun, go see your friends type thing also really helps with the mindset. And so, EB and I agreed to do pairs, and then we eventually put a team together. And even when registration came up, I almost was like, nah, don't sign me up for individuals. Like I was like, I haven't decided if I'm going to do individuals yet. And they're like, we'll just sign you up for it. I was like, okay, that's fine.
You can always give the slot
obviously
away.
I needed to get a spot. Yeah. And so after thinking about it, I was like, okay, I did the inaugural event. I did unofficial, but I've never done nationals in person. I have to do individuals in person at least once. I'm already going.
Uh-huh.
It makes sense they signed me up. Let's just do it.
So you still had some caution, it sounds like. Is the reluctancy that I'm sensing here still in that same vein, or is there something else driving that?
I think it's just the not wanting to fall back. I think it's really easy because of just my personality. Like I said,
fall back in terms of your mental
it's like relapse.
stance.
I didn't want to relapse into a performance mindset.
Got it. Yeah.
Because I am a type A. I am someone who wants to do well.
Do the best
that I can.
Right.
And that's the mindset.
That's the new thing, though.
That's the new mindset. And so making sure that was the mindset I kept. So, EB, before she went on and did the podcast with you, prepping and who are we supposed to be watching? Who do we think is going to do well? She had talked to me saying like, hey, how are you feeling? Like, what place are you thinking? Like, what's your goals? And I said, I same as Worlds. Like, I just want to be happy and happy with how I performed. I don't care about anything else. I'm not going to say I'm going to be top 10. Not going to say top 5. I'm not going to say top 20. I didn't even want to say top 50. Like, it just, whatever happens is going to happen.
Did you prep mentally in any way for this to sort of reinforce remember you're in a good mindset here. Remember, we're not trying to like, the goal isn't a place. The goal is an experience.
I think because I had practiced that mindset in general in other things in life, as well as not just like, I'm not going to be the best at this. Right. When you write a manuscript with a research team, usually it's multiple people writing and someone's going to critique your writing. Someone's going to be like, what about this? Or this doesn't make sense. So I think that definitely has helped my mindset because it, again, in that sense, it's making the research paper stronger. It's not critiquing you. It's how can we make the research stronger? And so kind of going through that process as a PhD student and my first year as faculty, but then starting to work through the puzzles the same way in terms of, okay, I started having my fiance, I just gave him a pile of puzzles and having him put them in bags. So I didn't necessarily know exactly what I was going to get. I knew some of them were the otter puzzle that was all black. I knew that there was ones from Worlds when I went, like the lupine puzzle that I could get. I had no idea really what I was going to pull out of the bag. And I would do puzzles, sometimes in the evening after a long day of work and just being like, you have to do this when you're tired. You have to do this when you're in a bad mood because something went wrong. You have no idea what your mindset is going to be, what's going to happen at a competition. You have no idea what the lighting's going to be. So don't say I'm only going to practice in sunlight. You're not going to have sunlight at nationals. And just working through that puzzle, however it goes. And there'd be times where I would, of course, just get frustrated and then I was very good throughout the process of practicing and prepping for nationals of, okay, take a deep breath. This might be something everyone else struggles with in terms of like this section or this type of flowers that are a trap, as Kristen Thuve would say. And so just kind of reminding myself and working through that process just in practice, like, okay, take a deep breath, refocus, especially if I was working on a puzzle and maybe all of a sudden I wasn't getting pieces in super fast. And I felt like I had a dry spell, just, okay, refocus and go. And I even had to do that once in the prelim at nationals with that flower market puzzle. They came up early. I probably still felt like I had probably 75 to 50 pieces left when Becca Taylor pulled my time card off the side of my table and they were swarming. So I was like, okay, this is different. Keep focusing. And they don't stay on me that whole time on the live stream. This is the only time I've really gone back and watched live streams. I don't pay attention to live streams. I never went back and rewatched anything from Worlds except for Sarah and I winning because of our thought that when we won second place at Worlds, we were third because of how the cheering happened. And the moment we realized we were second, that's the only thing I've ever gone and rewatched from Worlds 23.
So you got to the first round puzzle. It's a relatively dark, relatively muddled sort of puzzle, but you just sort of opened it, took a deep breath, and off you went.
Yeah. And it was funny because kind of everything I had practiced in terms of like, I'm not going to put all my pieces to the left side of the puzzle. That went out the door for that puzzle. Like, again, everything I'd practiced all of a sudden went out the door, but I was like, okay, just keep breathing, just keep putting pieces in. And so as it went, I would, okay, take a breath, look at something new, try to find something else to focus on if all of a sudden something wasn't clicking the way I thought it should be. And so just continue, okay, breathe, keep going, breathe. Okay, this is going fast. I'm getting pieces fast for that puzzle, right? Like, okay, right. It's a lot of pick and place for that puzzle. And it felt like a very chaotic build in my head. I was like, oh, there goes all the practice. Like everything I thought I had gained as an individual. And I remember telling Mari Black afterwards, like, so much for all the practice, and thinking I learned so much since Worlds, and that my puzzling had gotten so much better since Worlds, just based off of my mindset change, but also starting to focus on being consistent on piece placement, like where I have all my pieces on the board, how I pull my pieces, how I flip and sort, like any of that out the door for that puzzle. And she's like, with this type of puzzle, that's like, yeah, that's kind of how she felt too, I think, based off her comment. And so as they came up and kind of started swarming me, as I was saying, my hands started shaking because they were there. It was the pressure. And there was a point where I just had that last corner that a lot of us, I think, had left at the end. And I flipped the puzzle upside down so the corner was closer to me because of where my pieces were. Instead of moving my pieces, I just moved the puzzle itself to be able to reach that. And I fumbled with pieces for what felt like a minute. It was probably 30 seconds. And I was like, they were all around me. I was like, they're probably like, what are you thinking? Like, I had that, minute, like, oh geez. And I was just like, no, just take a deep breath. You only have 20 pieces left. You can get these in the puzzle. And so just taking a moment, I didn't touch the pieces when I took that breath, and then, okay. And remember, like, focusing back on the puzzle with that breath, really. And then the rest went together. Boom, 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 boom.
And you finished second.
I did. I finished second.
Despite all the chaos you thought was going on.
Yeah.
Despite all of the throwing your practices and strategies and tactics out the window, you still did really well.
I did. And I think it was just reminding myself to breathe. And that puzzle was going to be hard for everyone. It was a dark puzzle, as you said. It was kind of muddled, very busy. So it was probably going to be a chaotic puzzle for most people. It was not something you could just pick 20 pieces and put the pieces together, boom, boom, boom. That's not how that puzzle was. And it wasn't that way for anyone, really.
Based on that experience, were you able to sort of level up your approach to the next puzzle?
I think it was just reminding myself, like, hey, that worked for me. Just focus on the task at hand. You're not going to hate the puzzle. If you hate the puzzle, it's just going to make it worse. If you give your mindset that I'm going to hate this puzzle as soon as you open the box. And even going into prelim C, my big thing was to not be overly anxious. And so I kind of tried to stay out of the conference center. I was there for the first round, and then I left for the second round after seeing what the puzzle was, and just kind of went and did my own thing, grabbed lunch, went for a walk. I have my 10,000 step day streak, 10,000 steps a day streak that I've maintained throughout nationals as well. And
Congrats.
So just, thank you. So just being like, okay, let's go get some fresh air. You can't change the puzzle you're going to get. You've done everything you can to this point to prepare, given everything else going on in life. I'm a new faculty member. I have grants I'm worrying about. I have travel, trying to start planning a wedding, right? So I practiced as much as I could, given the time I had and the puzzles I had available to me. And so just trusting that I'd done as much as I could to do the best I could, given all the circumstances. So I just kept reminding myself that. And I got this little, probably 20 minutes of a little anxiety. I went and did kind of a warm-up puzzle, was talking to Kat Dilks. She showed me her quiet space she had found. So I appreciate Kat for that. And kind of settled back in and was like, okay, let's do this. And it's funny because when I walked into the prelim section, I think it was Isa who's like, you feel very zen right now. I'm just going to sit in that zen with you because that's how I feel standing next to you. And I was just like, a lot of people were really anxious. I was just like, trying to stay as calm as I could in terms of just keep breathing. Like,
I love that you exuded that. Like, it wasn't just internalized, but like it was overflowing outside of you.
yeah, I think I'd done so much. I mean, I do a lot of yoga. I try to do a lot of mindful practice as well, and just accepting that and trusting everything I had done up to that point that was the best I could do, and accepting that no matter what came out of that bag, it was the puzzle I was supposed to do. So just do the puzzle. And not saying, who else is in my round? Mari's in my round. Oh, Mari's in my round. Mari's really good. Oh, Kelly's in my round. Kelly's amazing. I love Kelly. I love Mari. They're amazing puzzlers. Oh, who else is in my, like, right. There's people in my round that no one knew. We could have an Alice occasion where Alice just comes to nationals. Alice Rowe comes out of nowhere and wins nationals. Like, that could happen. And some people were asking me, like, oh, who do you think will win? Or like, what are you hoping for? I was like, I'm excited to see who comes out of this that we don't really know about or hasn't competed yet, to see how they do. And I mean, Hannah Doyle is one of those people. She did amazing in finals. Like, she was starting to come on the puzzle scene. People knew about her because of Twitch and whatnot. She was posting some great times on myspeedpuzzling.com and everything, but you didn't necessarily know who she was or how she would do once she got to the competition because of this mindset. And she was phenomenal. She was right behind Kelly. So I was just like, I have no idea. And it doesn't matter what everyone else does. And Tiffany was also in that round. And right, like, Tiffany and I have been very close in a lot of competitions, but me saying, oh, Tiff might beat me, Mari might beat me, like, okay, they might beat me, I might beat them. It depends the puzzle, it depends the mindset. Like, let's just go have fun. So when Isa said that I was able to project that zen just by walking up next to her, I was like, okay, I've done what I've come to do, if that's how other people view my look on it.
Over the course of this competition, and indeed leading up to it, I saw a lot of people stressing about the pressure of competing. And I feel like this has increasingly become a theme over the course of this year. So one of the things I'm really excited that you're sharing this story about is because I think that you're reflective of a thing that is happening. Maybe you experienced it earlier, and it's the wave of it is sort of passing through the community as it currently stands. So I'm wondering if there are things that you can share about how you approach things that maybe, I mean, you've done a great job of sort of giving out bits and pieces of it, but how can other people sort of benefit from what you have learned along the way? Like, what are some things that you feel like work really well for you that maybe can help other people contextualize how they're doing things so that they don't worry so much about a particular placement?
I think one of them is trying to not hate puzzles, because I think there's this tendency where you open a puzzle, whether it's at competition or you see a puzzle that another competition had, and you're like, oh, that would be terrible. Getting out of that mindset and just understanding that every single puzzle you do, whether it's competition, at home, with friends, there's something to learn from that puzzle. And that's really the growth mindset of, what can I learn from this puzzle? Oh, elephants? I really struggle with these shadows on these elephants, and there's 3 of them or 5 of them. I'm not going to be annoyed with elephants. They're great creatures. And really just focusing on, what can you learn from the puzzle and not hating it. When I hear people say, I hated that puzzle, I never want to see that puzzle again, I get a little sad, because it's just a puzzle. It did nothing wrong. Like, yeah, it might be a challenging puzzle. A puzzle can be challenging. That's fine, but don't hate the puzzle. That's not going to help your mindset and how you benefit. I think if you tell yourself you're going to hate a puzzle before you even start it, that you're just doing yourself a disservice and putting that idea in your head. The other big thing is really finding something to help you recenter yourself when you are starting to feel flustered, or you are starting to get in your head and self-doubt, whether that's you hear someone else finish, right? Because most of us have headphones on. Not everyone does, though. Mm-hmm. And as a mental game, like, if you start hearing cheers and more cheers, how are you going to handle moving through that? And part of what I actually did for potential distractions was I started doing puzzles by myself, like in coffee shops or at a brewery, because a lot of the time people are going to come up and be like, what are you doing? Or they come and just stand and they might watch you for a little bit and then they walk away, and they might not, ask you questions in that moment, especially if you do have earbuds on, but just getting used to people moving around you, because if you are finishing, not first or the top few, there's always people moving around you. And I know a lot of people were talking about the anxiety of when the camera crew came up to them.
Yeah.
Same thing is like, what's going to recenter you? And for me, it's taking a deep breath, and that really recenters me. Some people, it's touching a piece a certain way, like just rubbing a piece, really something to help your senses, or your heart rate. So breathing helps heart rate, or doing something, closing your eyes and taking a breath. Some people do stuff you do for other anxiety, like test anxiety, will really help you here, like rubbing a piece and having that sensory input. I guess someone might be able to do it with a smell. So I think having something that's going to ground you and works, like use it in practice when you're doing a puzzle, because we all get flustered at times when we're doing different puzzles, even in practice. You might get in that mindset. So how can you start practicing in your practice to recenter yourself and, okay, this isn't working for me. What's the next step? How can I recenter myself, calm myself down for a moment so I can actually focus on the puzzle again and not get stuck in my brain?
Are you planning to compete anytime in the near future?
So I did kind of tell Val that I would, I told Val at Nationals that I would help commentate individual finals with Sarah next year if she wanted me to. Maybe my mind will change about that, and maybe I will sign up for individuals again. But I love the community, and it is a lot of stress to do individuals. I'm very happy with how I did this past Nationals in individuals, teams, and finals. But because the mindset is so different, it's more enjoyable doing it as a team or as a pair. Getting back to just that, I enjoy puzzles. I want to do puzzles. I don't want the stress of it. I think a lot of it's going to depend on a year-to-year, month-to-month basis of what else is going on in my life. Do I have space to give myself to continue practicing that mindset of everything's going to be okay? Just take a deep breath and do the puzzle and enjoy the puzzle, even if it is not necessarily the puzzle you'd pick for yourself to do.
And that mindset really means that you can be opportunistic about the challenges you want to take on, right? Like you can choose to do a puzzle, like choose to do a competition or not. You're not sort of invested in how you relate to a competition. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I mean, people have asked me like, oh, are you going to go to Worlds again? And I've said basically since 23 that I would not do Worlds again unless it moved, mostly because I want to see more of the world.
Yes.
You have to take a good chunk of time off for it. Obviously, we only have so much vacation time, most of us, to take.
And it's getting longer.
It's getting longer. It's harder. You have to take off a whole week in general. But if you want to do any other travel and see anything else, you have to then take off additional time either before or after. I loved that I waited till after to do my travel. So we went to Mallorca after Worlds 23. And Worlds was done. I got to just relax. I didn't have to think about puzzling. I redid the final puzzle just for fun while drinking a beer, sitting on top of a mountain in Mallorca at a monastery. Like I had a great time, but I don't think I'll do Worlds unless it moves. I would love to start seeing it move. There's whispers, but I also know there's whispers that that's not going to happen anytime soon. I already said that people can expect me at Nationals next year. I don't know at this point if I'll do individuals. We'll see the actual dates. Just with my research schedule as well and grants and everything, being in academia, you never know what's going to happen. And also getting closer to planning a wedding because we're not getting married till 2026. So just kind of seeing where I'm at when registration comes, and maybe I'll sign up and then back out and give the spot to someone else. We'll just see kind of how it goes between now and then.
I'm hearing a lot of people talk about not going to events because they feel the stress and pressure about it. And I wonder if people like sort of make the mind shift that you were able to make, if that means that they're also going to be able to pick and choose more readily the kinds of competitions they want to go to and the opportunities as they present themselves. And we will see some sort of maybe changing of the guard for certain groups of people who are great competitors. They have had great performances, but the they don't necessarily want to live in the world of stress and pressure that comes with that. And if they shift their mindset, then they lose the stress and pressure to a certain extent. I don't know that we get all the way past that, but also means that maybe they don't feel compelled to go to nationals or worlds or things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think people should be compelled if they love the community and want to see their friends. I think there's a lot of reasons to go to nationals, even if you're not going to do individuals, or even if you're not practicing as much as you can. I mean, if you can get in the mindset that, I don't have this amount of time, but I still at least want to go and enjoy people, you can make the decision whether you do individuals or not, or pairs or not. But I think people really love the community. I mean, it's great. It's a little overwhelming to actually get to see everyone, especially for me who hadn't done a big national event since the pandemic. But I do hope that people start to question how they want to view puzzling. Like, do they want to be this stressful thing that they're crying over because they're so stressed out about it? Because I've been there. And so I hope the people that, are really struggling or feeling that pressure or stress to be the best. It's an ever-changing community. We've seen this community grow so much. And part of that growth is amazing, but also part of that is realizing that there's going to be, new and better people that do really well on certain types of puzzles or do well under pressure. But why are they doing well under pressure? What are they putting the focus on? Is it the outcome or is it the process?
All right, let's move to the speed round.
Sounds good.
Gradients, patterns, or fur?
Ooh, actually fur.
Fur. You may be the first person who said that. Illustrations or photos?
I've definitely started loving photos more recently.
Jumbles or busy puzzles versus landscapes?
Oh, busy.
Round or square?
Square.
Wood or cardboard?
Ooh, that for speeding, definitely cardboard, but I do love my wood puzzles.
Individuals, pairs, or teams?
Pairs.
Ribbon cut or random cut?
Random cut.
300, 500, or 1,000?
500.
Current favorite brand?
Puzzle Twist, and a recent one is LMB like LMB.
Can you spell that?
ELLEMBEE.
Do you have a favorite puzzle?
I do. It's probably the covered bridge puzzle, the White Mountain covered bridge, that really got me into puzzling, and one of the first puzzles I chose to do over and over and over again.
Where can people find more about you?
They can find me on Instagram at Puzzle Problem.
Michaela Keener, thank you for joining me on Peace Talks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.